I'm so excited to chat with Beck Antonucci on the Awaken Feminine podcast today. Beck Antonucci is an emotional well-being and personal freedom coach supporting women to break through ineffective self-worth and body image stories, break free from shame and heal from past developmental and relational traumas to unlock their most authentic, expressed, open, confident, and fulfilled self. Beck is also a free thinker, embodied female thought leader, stigma fighter, public speaker, workshop mentor, host of the Raw, Real, and Vulnerable podcast, and founder of the online program True Transformation. And I know she has so much love and wisdom to share with us today. She's a fellow Perthie. Woohoo! So she's joining me from Perth in Australia. Welcome to the show, Beck.
Oh my God, so much fun. So much fun that we're also here from Perth.
Yeah, I'm having a run of guests from Perth recently. You're actually the 120th woman that I've interviewed. I just had a
Wow.
look. And yeah, and I haven't really interviewed anyone from Perth. And then lately I've been just interviewing Australians and people from Perth. So I'm like,
We've got a really incredible community here in Perth, Western Australia. So I'm really proud of us.
yeah, so I'm excited. And it's always good to podcast during the day and not late at night or
7
really
a.m.
early
in
in
the
the
morning for
morning.
the Americans, later in the afternoon for the Europeans.
Yeah, exactly. You get
Yeah,
it.
I understand fully.
So, Beck, before we dive into our conversation, I always like to ask my guests this question, and that is, what is your definition of awakened feminine?
Hmm. Awakened feminine for me is just living from a sense of aliveness and giving the self full permission to speak her truth in probably the scariest and most vulnerable moments where our ego is like, don't say the thing. And there's that part of us that's like, no, do, because you really deserve to speak your truth. That to me would be my current definition of awakened feminine.
I love that definition, and thank you for reminding us all that the definition can change because
Mm-hmm.
we're always awakening to another layer of ourselves. So that's a beautiful definition. Thank you. Now, Beck, I'd love to dive into, everything that you do and who you are. So, I gave you a really brief introduction of what you do and who you are. So, do you want to expand on that and just share with us, why you do all the things that you do, and yeah, that journey that led you to where you are now?
Yeah, I'd love to. I support women to break free from shame, break through unworthiness, and activate their most unique and authentic expression of themselves, which is why that description around who the awakened feminine is, I feel for us, that's all that's essentially a desire that we all have to be our most expressed selves. And there's layers upon layers on top of us as to why we can't be that, and conditions that we've placed on ourselves, our parents have placed upon ourselves, society has placed upon ourselves. So I really support women to peel those back and uncover what lies within so that they can cultivate their own internal courage to activate their unique voice and express themselves. I feel like everyone's expression is so different, but express themselves in a way that feels true and authentic to them. Some of the work that I do when it comes to shame can be body image insecurities, which can be body dysmorphia, it can be disordered eating, it can also be STI shame. I speak really powerfully about the herpes virus online, and that's had such a massive impact on who I am as a woman. And being able to essentially break free and break through from that and be able to talk about it in such a public setting, regardless of the feedback, was such a pivotal piece of my own personal journey. And so I also help women transition and move through and navigate the stigma and shame of the herpes virus, and supporting them to powerfully reclaim their personal power back from any single thing that has made them feel a lesser person in society's eyes. Again, so that the byproduct of doing all of this work is so that they can be their fullest expression. So that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, I love that. And okay, so a few questions popped up as you were talking. The first one is, have you always been someone that has been able to express herself, or did you have to do quite a bit of work to get to where you are just so happy to just talk?
So I would definitely say that I'm an extrovert, but I have always been happy to express the beautiful parts of myself, the ones that society would say are quote unquote good and acceptable and validated, and the ones that would gain external recognition and or approval. That was always easy for me. But the things that I thought made me a lesser person to express those and to be witnessed in those and to have them come out of my mouth, no, that took a massive journey, because my deepest fear was, what will people think of me if they were to know these things about me? Will I be accepted? Will all of society reject me? And this brought up all of my journey stemmed from being bullied horrifically by an entire group of women in high school. So my greatest fear was women, and my greatest fear was not being accepted by them. And so that was what I was running from my entire life. And so if I was quite certain that if anyone knew these things about me, that same trauma would repeat. I'd be rejected again. So I was trying to do, in my young adult 20-year-old life, I was trying to find ways to gain your approval and your acceptance. Because if 𝐁𝐞𝐤 thought that I was great, then that made Beck great. But if you didn't, well, then that meant that immediately I don't as well. My entire worth lied in you telling me that I was worthy. So anything that I thought that made me bad or unlovable, no, expressing myself in that domain, there was so much resistance, because I just didn't want you to tell me that I'm not worthy to be loved or liked by you.
What was that pivotal moment or like events that led you to start going, I can share those parts of me, those shadows that no one wants to talk about, that no one wants to know about? What was it that made you start going, I'm just going to talk about it?
A long journey of cultivating the energetic body that could hold that. I remember long before the herpes virus, I'd gone through a really, really big disordered eating journey, and there was a lot of shame attached to it. And I spoke out about it on the internet probably before I was ready, and before talking on social media was a thing. Like 10 years ago, when not everyone was talking on the internet, or even longer, maybe 15 years ago. And so I shared about my disordered eating journey, and I got so much response. It was almost like a semi-viral post for me at the time. And I got I received so many Me Too's, so much acknowledgement. And so that was a little bit of evidence that I had in the back of my mind that it is okay to share. I just wasn't fully prepared for what it felt like to receive so many people sharing their own journeys. I wasn't skilled. I wasn't equipped to handle everyone's vulnerability at the time. But as I went on my journey and desired to share more and more and more, I kind of had little memories like that one in my back pocket to remind me that if I did share, that I wouldn't be rejected, that I would be accepted, that people would honor me for my vulnerability. And so there was micro moments. That was one of them, specifically around the herpes virus, because that was my greatest fear. That was really me leaning into my vulnerability, kind of like dipping my toe in. I would start with a friend who I really trusted. And then that friend would meet me in their vulnerability and share something really deep about themselves back. And I'd realize, I create deeper and more meaningful connection when I share this part of me. And then I'd do it with the next friend. And the ego is always trying to gather evidence to prove that we're either safe or not. And my head told me, if anyone knew this thing about me, I am not safe. And so the more that I could gather evidence bit by bit by bit by bit in really safe spaces, that was where I was cultivating more courage to use my voice and just more proof that, hey, I can say this thing, I can tell people this thing, and nothing bad will happen. And I feel like over my years, I developed enough proof to then say it's time to jump off the deep end, because now you know how to swim.
Wow. I just love that, something that people would, like you were saying, that it's so shameful has brought this light, of you sharing your journey and helping other women and other people to not feel that shame. It's just that polarity, that duality that we live in. Are you I know you're an open book, so can you share a bit more about your herpes journey? Because you're my first guest where we're even diving into this topic, and I'll love for you to share more about it, because I think it's important that people know.
Yeah, sure. The herpes virus is such a beautiful conversation, because it can be really dark for a lot of people, and there can be a lot of shame and a lot of unworthiness. And I personally believe that there would be suicide statistics attached to it that we would never know. It was a consideration of mine. And if I'd have taken my life because of my diagnosis, no one would have ever been able to say she took her life because of her herpes diagnosis. But if you were to, there's a study that's been performed of like, what are the other searches related to suicide? And there's two. I can't remember what the second one is, but the first one is herpes.
Oh, wow.
So it's a really, really deep and massive conversation. When I found gone through a huge disordered eating journey, attempting to change my physicality to get the girls from high school to like and love me, to be good enough, to be popular, to be beautiful. They used to scream these really nasty words at me in high school. So I believed that I believed that I was ugly. I believed that I was disgusting. I believed that I'd never be accepted in the world. And so when I found the gym and started losing weight and people started to validate me with compliments, I started to feel safe in the world and that people would like, love, and accept me. When the herpes virus came across my path, that was like everything I'd worked for my entire life to look a certain way ripped from me. And now I tested positive for the most stigmatized virus on the planet. I believe that no woman in Australia tested positive for it. I was sure that no man would ever love or accept me, that my sex life was ruined. And it was a really, really dark and very deep time. And then I remember sitting on the ocean, basically praying to God, whoever you connect with, God, universe, source, higher power, saying like, how did this happen to me? And what do I do with this? And the message came through for me that this was a gift for me, a gift wrapped in really, really strange wrapping paper that's asking me to finally see me for me and feel worthy because of who I am as a woman, not what I look like, not what I can give to the world, not the work that I do in the world, but just who I be. Just loving myself as and believing that I'm worthy. And that was essentially the path that I went on. Great. Everything external has now been ripped from me. And anything external that I worked for didn't even bring me the worthiness that I thought that it would. So now it's time to actually truly generate it and cultivate it from within. And that was the entire self-introspection, self-study, personal development, personal growth, workshops, mentors, plant medicine. That's really the herpes virus was the catalyst for me diving so deep into all of that because I knew the path that I'd taken up until then wasn't working.
Wow. I just love that you were saying that this is your gift wrapped in like weird wrapping paper. It is very weird wrapping paper. Can I ask you how long ago it's been since you were first diagnosed?
Almost 10 years. So I'm 34. I found out when I was 25.
Wow. Yeah. And like at the time you're saying that suicide did cross your mind and then you died, then you what stopped you from going down that path of suicide?
So I was with basically a rebound boyfriend who didn't tell me and who promised me that he was STI free. But when I told him, he said that he still loved me, that I was beautiful, that we can still have an incredible relationship together. He took me on holidays, bought me heaps of gifts. And so to begin with, because when I first found out, it was in the midst of a herpes outbreak, and your first one is typically the most painful one. And I wasn't educated about what the herpes virus is. I don't think any of us have ever been like, I really would love to be informed about the herpes virus. So a lot of us find out about it hands-on. And Google is the most horrible doctor, and there's a lot of misinformation on there. So I had no idea what it was, but as the outbreak's occurring, it was such a terrible and painful experience that I didn't know how long it would last for. I thought maybe that was my experience for the rest of my life. And so I didn't realize it was maybe a 7-day thing and it could quite possibly never happen again. Or if it did, very, very, very infrequently, only when I'm very, very stressed and to a much lesser painful degree. In fact, now if I was to ever get an outbreak, and I don't believe that I ever need to receive them, but if I was, I wouldn't even really know it. If I didn't know that I test positive for the herpes virus, I'd think that maybe I cut myself shaving. So the pain never came again. But as it occurred, I was just like, this is my experience of basically my sexual organs, some of my favorite parts of my body for the rest of my life. I literally am ruined. As it left, I was then like, okay, well, this is a different experience because now my body feels the same, but my head is just telling me something different. And I'm a really pro-natural health person. So the herpes virus for me didn't come back for a long time. And that was my way to almost navigate it, as that rebound boyfriend was taking me on holidays and buying me bags and basically trying to buy my love back from the pain that had been created. What was really obvious for me was that physically it didn't exist. I just knew in a blood test it really did. If the outbreak had come back time and time again, I think it would have been a lot more challenging for me to navigate. But the fact that it was that one time, and then the outbreaks were very infrequent over the years, that really did support me in navigating it more powerfully.
Wow. I used to be I say I used to be a pharmacist. I still have my pharmacy degree, but I'm not a pharmacist anymore. But
You're not a practicing
I'm
pharmacist.
not a
You're
practicing.
retired.
Yeah, I'm a retired pharmacist. Yes, I
You're an
am.
awakened woman now.
Yeah.
Even though pharmacists can be awakened women. We're not saying that you're not.
Yes, that's right. Oh, I was not awakened when I was in pharmacy. Let's just put it that
Okay.
way. And we learned about the drugs for herpes, but we don't learn too much about it. So can you tell us a bit more about, so once you have herpes, this is for life, right? So
Mhm.
can you can then pass it on to people? Like how does it work?
So that's the thing that I find is most terrifying about the herpes virus when you're finding out about it. Because like I said, I didn't know what it was. I've gone to the doctor. I thought that maybe I had a UTI. She was going to tell me to drink cranberry juice and I was going to go home.
Mm.
And so when she tells me, I'm looking at her like, just give me the antibiotics, put the injection in my butt. Like, I've never had an STI before. I don't know what it is, but just send me out of here and tell me how to get rid of it.
Mm.
And when she says it's incurable, that can be a shocking thing to carry because you're carrying the antibodies in your system for life.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, the woo-woo part of me believes that there is a cure out there in the world. I just haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
But currently, up until what we know, it's incurable. And that can be a really heavy thing to navigate. And because what you're also finding out in that moment as a young woman or even a man is that the version of you that was STI free, that person's dead, like gone in an instant. So you are literally finding out about a new version of you that gets to come online and grieving that past version of you in an instant. And that can feel really painful. And then the other massive fear that people have attached to it is, well, now that I'm a carrier of the virus, I do have the ability to transmit. Doesn't mean that you're going to. I know lots of people in long-term partnerships who have never transmitted to their husband, to their wife. Some people will give it the first time they have sexual intercourse with another person. So that's another thing to onboard, that you're grieving a past version of you, you're integrating this new version of you who does carry a very stigmatized virus. And also the acknowledgement that, well, once I start having sexual intercourse again, there is a chance that I will pass this on to someone else. And that can be a lot for someone to carry.
Mm. How did you navigate that?
So to begin with, denial for a lot of years. Like I said, when it didn't come back, and I am fortunate that I had been in the fitness industry, the health industry. So I did have a high value for high quality drinking water, high quality nutrient dense foods, moving my body, doing meditation. And I was very sure that I could heal this naturally, like I said. So I was doing cold therapy, infrared saunas, plant medicines, anything to heal and make sure that I didn't ever have to tell anyone that I test positive. And so for me, I think the high value that I had for my physical health really helped me navigate it. But for many years, it was denial that got me through until I realized that what ended up happening. Denial was my first stage. Then being really angry was my second stage. It's almost like stages of grieving.
Yeah.
Denial, then grieving, then projecting at everyone else that it's their fault. I was so mad at men.
Yeah.
In particular, I was mad at my ex-boyfriend because I really, really loved him and wanted to marry him. And because our relationship, I felt really unheard in our relationship, which led me to the rebound man. The rebound man is where I received the STI from. So I went through a huge hatred of men phase until I realized, hold on, I'm projecting the responsibility for my life onto everyone else. And once I realized that I was never in my power blaming everyone else for the way that my life is, that's the point at which I was like, it's now time to change and take total personal responsibility and reclaim my power back from the herpes virus, any fears I have of anyone knowing about me, any fears that I have around transmission. And that was essentially how I navigated from that point of total self-responsibility. Like, this is no one else's fault but my own. And not as a self-deprecating or blaming journey, but as let's take my power back from this thing and what can I do going forward? That's really how I did it.
Yeah. How long did that journey take?
Oh, 5 minutes. No, I would say 5 years was very, very, very challenging. And at the 5-year mark, I knew that it was really time to put my foot down and have the trying to heal it naturally was all in that 5 years, but the actual total self-responsibility, stopping blaming, stopping being mad at my ex-boyfriend, stop being mad at the man who gave it to me, just stop being mad at the entire world and looking at myself and saying, how can I take my power back and create neutrality over what was once such a deeply painful and traumatic experience? 5-year mark was a place where I was like, I'm sick of my own bullshit. I can't keep doing this.
And is that when you dived into all your personal development and everything? Or
Well,
did you do that before?
No, I'd been doing that for the entire 5 years, but I wouldn't tell anyone about the herpes virus. So I felt like that was just the one little bit of me that no one would ever have to know. So I would go to the personal development workshops and I would talk about the eating disorder, and I would talk about the girls who bullied me, and I would talk about the partner who assaulted me, but I would never, ever, ever speak about the herpes virus. I was like, no, all this personal growth can help me, and I can just do the work on this behind closed doors. No one has to know. And I was quite rock solid in that until after 5 years of it. I was like, I said to myself, the fact that I'm hiding this, I know so much about shame, and I'm sure anyone listening has probably tuned into a little bit of Brené Brown. Shame grows in the dark. Yeah. And I'm being told this left, right, and center. Everyone's sharing Brené Brown on YouTube. And I was like, no one ever has to know this thing though. And there was almost like my higher self saying, but yeah, Beck, you get to bring this out, bring it into the light. It's okay. And that's when I went to war with it, saying I get to do the work so that I can bring it out into the light and be a no matter what stand for all of my expression.
I love that. So it's so brave and courageous. And I see you on social media and you are like out in public, like I think I saw like one of your posts, you're like in a nightclub or something and you're like holding these signs saying I have herpes. And I'm like, okay, so when did that start, Beck?
Oh, I'm so funny. Hey, oh my God, the amount of pain that I was in, I swear, 25-year young me would cringe. She would be like, we are not going into a nightclub with a bright pink sign. But I just got back from Europe and I went for a month, and I was taking an entire month off work just to give back to me. And I thought, what can I do while I'm away to really still be a stand for the work that I do and show women that we are free to be ourselves anywhere and everywhere at any time of the day or night, in any place, in any space, no matter what the feedback is. And I just had this idea that was like, I'm going to print a bright pink sign that says, hi, I'm Beck and I have herpes, and take a photo of me with it everywhere I go in Europe. And so I did it in Mykonos, I did it in Santorini, I did it in a nightclub, I did it at the Trevi Fountain with what felt like thousands of people watching me. And the purpose of it is to say, because some people loved it, some places were like Croatia felt super judgmental, Italy felt really accepting, but the point is it doesn't matter what the feedback is. The point is I choose myself in every space, in every domain, and that was really the essence that I wanted to share with other women, that you're free to be yourself.
I just love it. When I saw it pop up on my Instagram feed, I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to talk to you.
I swear to God, there is a 25-year-old version of me who's like, stop being so ridiculous. Stop it.
Yeah, she's cringing for sure.
She's cringing hard.
She's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Do you know who else is cringing? My kids, when they're eventually born, they'll be like, Mom, I found this on the internet. What did you think you were doing?
It's okay. Kids are supposed to be like, embarrassed by their parents. So
yeah, okay. They're definitely going to be.
So when did you decide to, then be the leader, be the person that, steps up and helps other women to, or, do you work with men as well or just women?
I have so many men who reach out to me. I speak to women online, and sometimes, rarely, I keep about a 5% leeway in my business to work with men, just because my highest alignment, highest excitement is working with women.
Yeah.
And quite often when amazing men come into my world, I refer them, if intuitively and from a place of desire, I'm a no, I'll just refer them out to someone incredible in my community who I know can probably serve them from a more powerful place.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I'm very similar in that I work mostly with women, but if depending on how the energy flow goes, then I might refer the men.
Well, last December, for example, all my application forms were men, just all of them.
Oh, wow.
And I thought to myself, well, God is obviously speaking to me. There's a message here. It's not like one or two. It's all of my application forms, bar like 3 in December, are male. So what am I meant to be receiving here? And so I always love to ask and sit with it and see what feels really good. But if I'm not a full body yes, then I just won't say yes, because I don't feel like that's going to be good for me or for them.
Yeah, exactly. So when did you decide to just be that leader and help women to navigate, not just with herpes, but with, really the true expression as well?
So I did a 6-month personal development course with my mentor, Preston Smiles. And I declared to myself that at the end of it, I was going to go live about testing positive for the herpes virus on Facebook. And I was finally going to free myself of this thing, because I realized that my healing was never actually healing my nervous system from the virus and never carrying the antibodies, but being able to speak it loudly without fear of judgment. And when I did first speak it loudly, I really did still fear the judgment, and I hadn't fully transitioned through all of the shame, but that was kind of a line in the sand of me choosing myself. And by this point, I'd done 7 years of study, and I knew I was watching coaches online do incredible things, but also I was watching them and starting to think, I know more than you. I'm a better coach than you. And not from an egotistical place, but just I'm so skilled. But I was so scared to be seen as all of me. And so from the moment that I spoke about the herpes virus, it's really funny. It was synchronistic that was the same time that my old e-commerce activewear closed down. And then I was left with space, which was about 3 months. And between my activewear closing down and that 3 months, the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, my skill set, other than my activewear, my old skill set is personal training, Pilates instructing, the fitness industry. And because non-essentials were closed down, I was left without a job. So my business had closed. I used to have 3 jobs. My 3 jobs were shut. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? And my mum said to me, are you going to go to Centrelink? In fact, she said it really loudly at the bottom of my house, which is in a really affluent area in Perth. And she yelled it at the top of her lungs as I'm standing on the balcony. And this isn't a judgment to anyone who requires government benefits, but I just couldn't believe that I'd gotten myself to a place that I required them. And she's yelling, have you applied for job seeker yet? And I was like, Mum, shut up. But the truth was, I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent on Friday. And that was kind of the rug ripped from under me of, wow, I've used my voice around this thing. I have 7 years of study and skill sets underneath me now that I've never truly had the courage to offer the world. And now I get to be seen for all of me and actually give my gifts. And from the moment that I chose to, my business blew up that month. And we're now 3 years, almost 3 years in, we're coming to the 3-year mark. And just my business has expanded and expanded and expanded since then. So it was really the divine timing of the pandemic hitting and the rug being pulled from me, and the shame button of my mum yelling, am I going to government benefits? Also attached to the fact that 3 months prior, I'd finally come clean with the world about who really I am, all parts of me, not just the beautiful parts. And then when I chose my business, it was like all my ducks were aligned.
I love that. Isn't it just beautiful when everything just all works, all comes together like a beautiful puzzle.
My favorite belief about life for me that I always aim to, even right now, honestly, I'm going through a challenging time transitioning from a house I've lived in for 6 years, but I remind myself everything is always working out for me, which means when things are good, everything is always working out for me. When things don't feel good, they're still working out for me, because I have a lot of friends who are coaches and they're like, your business blew up overnight. I'm like, I was broke and in $100,000 of debt. My activewear was failing. I was in a lawsuit with my ex-business partner. I had deep shame about herpes. That didn't feel like it was working out for me, and my business blew up overnight then. And yet everything was always working out for me. It was all setting me up for success.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, can we talk about, you just said you were $100,000 in debt and then you were in a lawsuit. Can we talk about that?
Oh, go for it. Yes. It's actually one of my favorite parts of my journey.
Yeah. What happened?
So I'm really proud of my business. And I think because the herpes thing can have such a massive influence, it's not a conversation I always get to have. But my coaching business, really, I'm so proud of it. And it's always been a part of me that I've always desired to be an entrepreneur, always. And I had this dream from age 19 that I was going to have an activewear. And I tried it twice on my own. I'd go to Bali, start it, put all my savings into it. The first time, $20,000. The next time, $35,000. I'd run out of money. I'd come back to Perth. I'd go and get a corporate job, save again, and go and start the thing again. And then I ended up the third time round, I ran out of money and I prayed to God for help. And the next day, literally, I've prayed to God 3 times in my life of being like, I'm in crisis point and I need your support. And I've received an answer the next day. And the next day I received this random email to my inbox saying, I feel like we have the same vision and I would love to be your silent investor. And I received a large $60,000, a large chunk of money to be a 50-50 investor in my activewear that I, years and years and years and years and years of time and effort to get it off the ground. And that basically gave her wings. And then my business partner and I, we didn't fully align after 1.5 years of working together, which I think intuitively, well, not I think, I knew intuitively at the time when I said yes to the capital injection. I was like, I can't say no. God's just given me exactly what I've asked for, but intuitively, I know that this isn't going to work out. And that was basically my dream. I had a warehouse over in China. The product was amazing. The branding was incredible. I was so proud because this was my vision that I felt in my body that I would bring forward. And when January before the pandemic hit, I knew that the partnership was going south so terribly. We'd taken it to legal because we just couldn't communicate with each other. I didn't have the funds to even pay for this lawyer. It got up to like $20,000. I was already in $100,000 of debt. And so when that closed down, it was just like, what am I actually going to do next? I just went back to personal training and Pilates instructing to support me whilst I was building this business. So when the business was ripped from me, I literally thought to myself, well, now what do I do? Like, my dream has been taken from me and I don't know what's available now. And it really was the closing down of the activewear that I required for the space to be created for the coaching business to come forward.
Isn't that amazing? That you had to go through that. And also there's a part of me that thinks that God was like testing you with, you intuitively knew that you probably shouldn't have said yes. It was a lesson of learning to actually trust your intuition to some extent, right?
It's so funny. I went to Byron Bay for my birthday, and when I got there, I said to myself, God's going to talk to me on the entire trip and I'm ready to receive. And my flight got changed from Gold Coast to Brisbane, but my car hire was in Gold Coast. And because I bought it through a third party, they tried to double the price of the car hire. And instead of it being a $50 relocation thing, it was almost like the full car hire for the 10 days. So I was like, stuff it. I'm just going to get to the other place and pick up my original car. And I said to myself, someone is going to offer me a ride. The first man that I sit down next to turns to me and goes, how are you getting there? I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. He goes, do you want a lift? And it's kind of like, God's given me what I think that I asked for, but now I get to double check in with myself. Do I really actually want to receive this thing? Because to begin with, I was like, I have to say yes. And I was like, maybe I'm going to put myself in danger here. And I feel like that same scenario with my business partner. I was like, God obviously really wants me to have this business. Who just lands in your inbox and offers you money? And then the other party was like, Beck, when it's too good to be true, it always is. And I was just like, no, I need this. I'm gonna say yes and worry about all the consequences later. And the consequences really hit. But so many incredible lessons that I would never, as painful as it was, all the money, shame, everything that I had to navigate while I was in it, I would never take back that life experience.
Yeah. Do you believe that sometimes, well, actually all the time, it's the hindsight, so you learn from the hindsight, even though you're like, oh, if I listened to my intuition back then, it wouldn't have happened. But we're so grateful for those lessons when you look back. Right. Even
right now in this living scenario, I'm like, I can't wait in 2 years to be able to reflect, because I'm sure things are happening right now. I feel like this living scenario was 6 months before I was actually prepared to move. And I'm going through a lot of pain, and there's like friction between myself and my partner. There's a little bit of resentment that I've been navigating. We've been arguing. We don't normally argue. This is the first time our relationships really hit a road bump. And so I've been thinking about it, and I thought to myself, I can't wait for in 2 years to be able to see why God basically shook me up and moved me here 6 months earlier than my personality said I was ready. because I'm sure I'm going to meet some people and have some experience occur, and things are going to happen because I'm here right now that wouldn't have happened if I'd stayed in my home. But I'm just in my personality right now of the resistance. And I know afterwards when I can like join the pieces of the puzzle together, I'll be like, oh, that's why this happened this way.
Yeah, it's so beautiful when you get there and then you look back. But it's this trusting journey that is the hardest part. Have you had instances where you really just had to trust, even though like you just like, I mean, I guess right now you're just like trusting that things, but before you kind of had that awareness of trusting, were there times when you went, why am I doing this? Where is it taking me to?
I remember I used to show up on social media and be like, why am I so active on the internet? I'm not even selling anything. Like, why do I spend a lot of time there? And I feel like that really set me up. I was like, but I know, I'm sharing a message, something that's important to me, and long-term, long vision. I feel like something's coming forth through me. I don't even know what it is. I know it's desiring to emerge, but there was a lot of times I was like, why am I on the internet? Why do I talk about things? None of it is making sense. But there was almost like a calling saying, just like, keep going. It all has a purpose. It all has a purpose. It all has a purpose. Yeah, I think there's been many times like I've just like up and changed my life because I've had this internal calling. I had an incredible corporate job before I started the activewear the final time. I had an incredible corporate job that was causing me so much stress, and it was safe, good job, good wage, car, computer, all things. I was like, I hate my life. And my dad was like, what are you doing? Like, strict Italian father, you're safe, your bills are paid, you're earning good income. And it was just this deep internal knowing of I just know that even if I don't know what's next, this life that I'm in right now isn't what's meant for me. I know I deserve better. Even if I don't know what the next step is, I deserve better than this. And so sometimes I've just like pulled the pin and up and left on that, of knowing that where I am right now, I know I'm so deserving that this is not the experience that I said that I was subscribing to. And it's kind of looked a bit crazy to the outside world, but I've always been like, I know. But my dad and I used to have deep, like incredible arguments about it, to the point that I told him not to speak to me for about 1.5 years, because I said to him, I don't need your fears infiltrating my dreams. Maybe my dreams aren't here yet, but I'm working so hard to make them come alive. And if you can't believe in the dream until it becomes a reality, just stay out of my space until it's here. And that way you can see it. And now my dad's like, I don't even really know what Beck does, but she talks to people on the internet and they love it. And they're like, I don't even know what these results are that apparently they're getting, but she's got all these clients and like all these Italian friends are like, what does your daughter actually do? Dad's like, I don't really know, but it's really good.
Do they know you talk about herpes online?
Yeah. I think my dad's obsessed with TikTok. My mum's like stalks my Instagram and my Instagram story. So all my family, I just went to Europe. They're like, so what do you actually do? You know, when life coaching is just like not a thing for a lot of people, and what are you doing on the internet and how do you do it?
Yeah, I think Italian parents are probably very similar to Chinese parents, because my mum's like, why did you leave your pharmacist like safe, secure job and what are you doing?
It's so funny. When I was in London, I was with my nonna, and my nonna was talking to me about my cousin who just became a doctor. And she's bragging and she's like, we have a doctor in the family. And after like 20 minutes of her constantly talking about having a doctor in the family, I was like, well, no, you could ask me what I do for a living if you like. And she looked at me and I was like, I have a really great business as well, like as good as a doctor or better. And she looks at me and she was like, all people are different. Then she goes back, we have a doctor in the family. I was like, I'm not even going to bother.
I know. It's it's the doctor. Was it doctor? For us, it's like doctor, pharmacist, engineer, and lawyer.
Yeah. It sounds very similar to Italian culture. I was like, I'm just going to appreciate who you are and love you as you are, and I'm not going to try and change you.
Yeah. How did your parents take to you like talking or with your diagnosis, and then you like just talking about it? Were they okay with it, or were they the very ethnic parents and going, why are you talking about this?
Do you know what? I'm pretty fortunate with my family. I've always been kind of a loudmouth, like the outspoken one. And so they just ultimately want me to be happy. I think I do think that what supported them in understanding this is it's for a purpose. So I do feel the fact that my business does so well creates a feeling of safety in them, that she's okay. Because obviously parents want us to go to uni. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer. I think I said from age 5 that I was going to be a lawyer. When I finished high school, I got accepted into law. So my dad, his entire life was like, you said you were going to be a lawyer. So now that I have a great business, I think no matter what I'm actually talking about, the fact that I'm safe and secure helps them in their understanding of it. My mum's always been like, number one, believe in your dreams no matter what. And as long as you're happy, I'm happy. And I just think the outrageous things that I say, it's almost like, oh, that's Beck. Beck's a bit outrageous. Beck's wild. Beck's ridiculous. Beck's hilarious. I'm like the comedian in my family, also the black sheep. There's never really been it's just like, oh, that's Beck being Beck. That's Beck being wild, Beck being eccentric, Beck being so different to us. But we have such strong family values that no matter what any of us are doing, there's always going to be deep love. And I think it depends on what your intention is behind anything that you do as well. I'm not sharing about the herpes virus to be malicious or hurt people. It's from the intention of providing not only value to the world, but healing and permission and deep love for women to be able to connect deeper to themselves and to be able to create love for others. I had a woman yesterday send me a beautiful, I cried when I read it, a message saying, a year ago, I would have never slept with a man who tested positive for herpes. I must have found your account in divine timing. I found your account, became educated. The next man I met tests positive. Because I've been so educated by you, I was so open-minded to it. We're in love. He's the best man ever. If I hadn't come across your account, I would have said no to him. And so my family there's no way my family can judge that, because it's almost like you're going to judge me because really good things are happening in the world because a little bit of shame. Like, if you got a problem with it, I'm kind of the kind of person, if you got a problem with it, that's your problem to deal with, because I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, like what you're doing for the world. And that, just that message from the lady is just like, wow.
I cried.
Yeah.
I also love a good love story, but I thought that
Yeah,
was so beautiful.
that is so beautiful. I mean, yeah, what you're doing is so important. This question, sorry, this question popped into my head now. I probably popped into my head before, but you were talking about bullying and from from the girls in high school, and obviously then afterwards you're trying to people please, like me, I'm Beck, you need to like me, I'm doing all the things to make you like me. How did you then get through that? Not needing to be liked, and just being yourself. And what kind of healing did you need to do with those, it's like the sister wounds, right? That people have.
Pardon me. So number one, I would say that the sister wounds is something that I still work on. I know that I feel very safe with women when I'm leading them, because obviously I'm the one that's supporting them to love themselves. So there's not the space of and projection, because they see me as this person that's supporting them to create this deep healing for themselves. I still can sometimes, not very often, it's a dull thought now, but I can still feel the inner teenager that can fear women sometimes. And so I do a lot of work to basically reparent, really nurturing space, the inner teen, and remind her that no matter what, I've got her back. So 𝐁𝐞𝐤 can bully us right now, and it's okay. It's not going to happen again. Anything that she says, that's just her experience of her own projections at you, doesn't mean anything about us. And also a big part of my inner teenager healing has always been, if she doesn't want to come somewhere I'm going, the bully part of me, if I'm going somewhere where adult 34-year-old Beck gets to show up and she might feel triggered, intimidated, inferior, I will have a good talking to her and let her know, you don't have to come. Because she still sees the popular girls and wonders if she fits in, and creates all these stories about not belonging. And that's okay. but I've got her. So we'll have a conversation that I'm going somewhere. You don't have to come with me. But if I'm having a really good time and you want to show up, you're welcome. In terms of not desiring for people to validate me, that was in the awareness of the disordered eating journey. Every time I was like on the diet train and my body was losing all the body fat and looking like the fitness model, everyone would compliment me. You look amazing. You're so fit. What are you eating? How are you exercising? All the compliments. And I was kind of like high on the compliments, and that would make me feel super empowered. But then when the self-saboteur came in and I fell off the wagon and I was in that compulsive eating stage, all the ineffective thoughts would fly and amplify to the surface, and they would feel more painful than ever before. And that it was my realization that I was working so hard on my body and like really restrictive dieting, really just painful amounts of fitness, like excessive fitness. And I'd put myself on this basically self-destructive journey. And the compliment was only ever momentary. Like the good that I felt from you praising me, it didn't stick. And that was my realization. It was like, Beck, you're awesome. And I'd be like, yes. But it kind of like hit me and bounce. And then I'd need the next compliment. Like, yes. And it hit me and bounce. And I had this realization that I'm working so hard for people to praise me, but no matter how much praise I get, it's not sticking. It's not landing.
Yeah.
And that was basically the awareness of it really does get to be generated from within, because no amount of external validation, no amount of likes on the internet, no amount of praise, it will hit, touch, it might feel momentarily good, but it will never stick.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's really important for people to know that, it is an ongoing journey of healing and managing your emotions and understanding when, those things that might trigger or activate you come, and to how to navigate that. And I just love that you just have a conversation with teenage Beck and go, you come or don't, you don't have to come. And if you want to come, then awesome. It's really beautiful that you can do that. And yeah, I think it's really necessary for people to understand that you just don't heal from like sister wounds, like, straight away, and then you're you're okay and you can go off in the world. It's, it's an ongoing process. And I like that you were able to differentiate that, there's no sister wounds there when you're leading, but in other situations, that's when you might be triggered. So yeah, it's interesting. And also I think for most women that have sister wounds, which I think most of us do, that's how we differentiate and how we can go about and move forward and not be triggered and needing all the praise and validation that we always seem to be seeking.
And the acknowledgement that it's a process. It's funny, in the process that my partner and I are in, and it's funny that this is about the awakened woman. My partner has requested a more feminine and more surrendered expression and softer expression of me with him, which I have obviously said I would love to lean into. But the next day he's like, you're not being more feminine and more surrendered and more. I was like, well, we don't just have it. I know it's a very masculine, logical thing, but it's not like a light switch.
You're like, dude.
I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be so much more feminine today. I'm like, this is going to be like a very gradual stripping away the layers, like slowly chipping. Not sure if you've seen that analogy of the man that's like chipping at a wall and there's diamonds behind it. It's like, I don't just hit the rock once and all the diamonds pour out. It's just going to take time. It's a little baby step, not just like, okay, well, today, because my partner requested, I'm soft and surrendered. Jake's like, look at me, but that's what I asked for. I was like,
you're like, dude, come on. You can't change overnight. I can't change overnight.
Yeah, that's something that I'd love to just drill back home to anyone listening right now. It is definitely like the healing from sister wounds. Anything, it's a process. It's slow. It's gradual.
Yeah, love it. I'm just looking at the time, so I wanted to ask you a couple more questions before we wrap up. So the first one is, having gone through this journey that you've been on, if you were to go back to young Beck, what is that key piece of advice that you would tell young Beck?
Avoiding emotional pain will only further perpetuate more pain into your physical reality.
Whew. Wise. Thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Yes. And the last question is, what is currently setting your soul on fire?
Building team. I love being an entrepreneur, and I've done it solo for almost 3 years, and I've just brought on my operations manager, and we're creating some really cool long-term things for my beautiful business. And a big part of that is bringing other team on, growing a beautiful team of women who thrive. I love team. I love community. It really excites me. So that is something that I'm really leaning into at the moment.
Oh, so excited to see how that all unfolds for you and seeing your business boom even more than it is now. So thank you so much for this beautiful conversation, Beck. You're just such a joy and such a light, in this world. Like everything you do is just so important. And I'd just love you to share with us if people want to find out more about you, how they can work with you, all the things about Beck. Where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, I'm most active over on Instagram. So I've got myself, I have my podcast, but the quickest way to get in contact with me is Beck Antonucci on IG.
Awesome. I will have
I think I'm shadow banned at the moment, so you've got to type the full thing. Otherwise, you won't be able to find me, but I'm there.
Yes, because I was looking for you today because I was like, am I like spelling it wrong? Okay.
You have to type the entire thing. Like, yeah, it's wild, but for whatever reason, I'm shadow banned at the moment in the naughty corner from Instagram, which is frustrating. But just if you're loving it, come over, type the full thing.
Yes. And I will have all your details in the show notes so people can find you. Thank you so much once again, Beck. This has been awesome.
Thank you. You're amazing.